Hi, it's Jeff Cohen from the Florida Healthcare Law Firm. Welcome to another episode of the Healthcare Disruptors series. This one, I was thinking about it on the way over. This one is probably one of the most important episodes that I'll ever do because it focuses on something that we don't like to think about, but we need to think about, which is security and safety. Profiling today, SOS Technologies, Hector Delgado is the founder of that company, Navy SEAL, Lieutenant Commander, as I recall.
Retired.
And also Homeland Security guy for a long, long time. When you think security and situational awareness and how to deal with that, you think Hector. And Hector started a company with remarkable technology. I've never seen anything like it. Davidson is here as well with us, board certified expert in healthcare law and remarkable breadth of experience in healthcare facilities. This is something that everybody needs to know about, everybody needs to watch, especially in this day and age. We're not getting more peaceful as a species. We need help, we need awareness, we need solutions, and we need them fast. And I'm very confident and happy that Hector, that you did what you did and created this technology. I've never seen anything like it. So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for coming. A little bit about what you created, so the public understands. I've seen it, you've shown me, I'm like, I've never seen anything like it, so direct and so effective.
Well, we realized that, first and foremost, we realized that healthcare and workplace violence in healthcare it's one of the top verticals, if you will, or spaces that workplace violence occurs. You've got a lot of emotions in healthcare and hospital, whether it's patients, it's behavioral health, there's so many dynamics in a hospital. So we realized that when there's an emergency or an active threat, active shooter, whether it's a hospital or any other vertical, time matters, seconds count. And to provide actionable intelligence and situational awareness, not only to first responders immediately, but to those employees, so they can know something's happening, where the location is, and how can I, how can I survive? Where should I go? What can I do? And that's the tool, that's the platform that we've provided and built.
A little bit about the tool. What makes your tool so unique and different?
It basically is the patent that we have that allows us to communicate the information and provide visual overlays of floor plans to law enforcement. So an incident occurs, a panic button is hit, that's going directly to first responders, and it's going to those employees that need to know what's happening on that notification list. And it provides information of physical address, the room number, and it also has integrations to camera systems, to public announcement systems, to phone systems. So now you're using existing technology that's within the hospital, if you will, to leverage all this notification so you have the best outcome for survivability.
Give us an example. I know that you're already deployed in hospitals, and it's working at an alarming rate. I had no idea of the metrics until I was talking with you and Nick and Travis about it the other day, and you're like, in this one hospital alone, within a very short period of time, it got triggered. I mean, I couldn't believe the number of times.
No, what started out as my focus was active shooter, active threat, and it still is, of course. But we realized in the hospital that they had a communication challenge with the security officers having radios, using their phones. And in hospitals, a lot of healthcare systems have a behavioral health wing. And there are incidents that occur on a weekly basis. And these employees are getting assaulted. And by to get that notification using a phone or a radio, using their hands. Look, I've been shot at a lot in Iraq. It's not fun. You're going to lose all fine motor skills. So this employee needs help immediately. So having the ability to hit a button or a pendant that they control, and getting the response for those security officers to be on site immediately or within under 20 seconds to help them. That's important.
And I understand your technology is unique in that it goes direct to law enforcement. It doesn't go through channels.
So we have the active shooter, active threat that goes direct to law enforcement. But then there are organizations like the hospitals that actually want to control their narrative, and they're able to, in hospitals, they're able to deal with 90%, 95% of the local issues and emergencies. Sometimes there's folks that, are emotional, whether there was a death or they're responding to an emergency in the emergency room. So emotions flare. Those are things that can be dealt with at certain levels. And if it has to escalate, then they can call first responders. But in an active shooter, active threat where it's not a fire drill, where you have to assess and then you have to survive, having that direct connection to law enforcement is extremely important.
Oh, I would think so. It is. We were just talking before we got started about what you've experienced when you were general counsel to a large hospital system. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. We had 2014, middle of the night, 4 a.m., guy crashed his car out in front of the hospital, grabbed a shotgun, took a couple shots at other passing vehicles, and then went up to the medical office building, which at that time of the night was unoccupied, and blasted out the window, the glass doors, and gained access to the hospital that way. He walked a long way through that building into the hospital proper, up a flight of stairs onto a medical surgical floor of the hospital. Did not shoot anyone there, threatened a lot of people going along. Obviously, security was called right away. The Daytona Beach Police Department was called right away and responded fairly quickly. He did assault a nurse and then went into a room and killed himself. But there was a lot of blasting through the medical office building that took place, and something like this certainly could have helped the response time immediately. That's the worst that we ever encountered, but it's frightening.
It's interesting to me when we were talking on the call about this, that apparently CMS has security program requirements. I had no idea about that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It is important. CMS has done it. I don't know how widely it's being implemented and followed by hospitals. It's one of those things is they may not do it for expense or whatever reason, because the hospital margins are so slim. They do things when they have to, not always when they should. But they need to have it in place. And, the first time, my hospital made immediate changes.
Really?
After that. Immediate. Now, technology like this didn't exist even though that wasn't that long ago, didn't exist. But much more technology, a lot fewer open doors. Not that this guy came through an open door, but points of entry into the building were shut down. They must have added close to 300 more security cameras on the full campus to make sure it didn't happen again. Because there were times when we had, the ED would be full of people. If there was a fight downtown, sometimes the fight continued as injured folks got brought into, I rigged that. Got brought into the hospital. So things like that do happen. So I think at that point, they did just about everything they could, but it took that event to do it. And CMS is pushing now to get it ahead of time before anything like that happens. Because it's an open target. It's a lot of vulnerable people.
Yeah.
It straddles, besides the security risk, it straddles the business risk, because incidents occur. What happens now? You lose that part of the hospital, or you could shut down a large wing, and you lost control, belongs to investigators, et cetera. So it impacts business. And
right.
Of course, if we're operating a business, you want to try and mitigate these types of
and there's a PR aspect to it as well. I mean, if I'm a consumer and I got a choice between two hospitals, and one of them had an incident, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I'd rather go to the other one that didn't have the incident.
Right. You hit on something just now, because employees are now, just like teachers are now looking at schools and say, do you have this SOS system, or do you have an active shooter response system? Employees are questioning. What's the
really?
level of security? What do we have? How are we being protected?
You know what? I'm glad they're doing that because, it may not be a priority to administration at a time because they haven't faced a situation like you did. But if they don't think about it before they need it, it's a little too late, isn't it?
Right. Now, our ER was okay. We had a police substation there. So there was always at least one officer there based in the ER. But it was a huge campus, and that was one officer in one department. Now, that may be where the highest risk was, but it certainly didn't help with this active shooter.
Then, of course, your system is not just in healthcare businesses, but it's in every soft target that there
Houses
is.
of worship,
Yeah.
schools, distribution warehouses. Again, it can be used not only as an active threat, but also serve as a medical case in point in healthcare. In our hospitals, some of our locations have gang violence. So what do? The bad guys come up, they drop the body off at the emergency room or in the lobby. The security officer has to now, he's not a medical person, he needs to get help. Even though it's a hospital. So we have these medical buttons that we put in that lobby area where he can now mobilize the folks from the ER to either come and start rendering first aid and tend to that person. So these are the dynamics in healthcare where you've got gang violence, they drop someone off at the front, you've got the families, you've got opposing gang members watching, you've got a security officer or employees at the lobby that need to tend to something, a situation. And using a phone and radio sometimes, but having the ability to send an alert to folks that are on a pre-notification list that can respond. And again, you're saving time because of blood and loss, etc.
Then you're in schools as well.
In schools as well.
Right.
Definitely. Obviously, that's my passion. My daughter did not want to go to school on the anniversary of Stoneman Douglas. Horrible tragedy. And that's what kind of mobilized my team, myself, to that was the focus area. Then we realized that it's an epidemic. It can occur, like you said, in the hospitals. It occurs in houses of worship. You have hate crimes. So this platform, and I speak about alert buttons, but it's the platform that is the backbone of the system. The platform that can communicate to those cameras. And now that camera can stream the crisis, and that can be managed from a real-time crime center, law enforcement.
I was really blown away by the latest demonstration that you gave me, where the system can sense anybody walking around with a weapon and identify what the weapon is, where the person is in real time, and send that information right to first responders, which is amazing to me.
Yeah, that's propelled us to where we're at now, using artificial intelligence, using AI integrated into our platform that can now identify folks that might be on a blacklist, let's say. They've behaved in a bad manner, or they're on some type of list that when they enter your organization, their face is recognized and it can be sent to the Security Operations Center. And then whatever your protocol is, whether it could be intelligence, it could be, these folks have come up to the billing in the hospital before it's been bad. Let's just bring an officer to just see, let's just observe. Additionally, it could also be where employees are on a list that's the good list. We capture all the good ones, all the employees. Now we know who's visiting. So it can be used in a number of different ways. Of course, different states, privacy rights, etc. But that's the facial recognition. But of course, weapons is where it's at as well. Being able to identify weapons and take that notification to where it needs to go. So
because I know in a civil, you've been in war, you've been in terrible law enforcement situations. So your ability to stay calm and detect the threat, see the threat, and then respond to the threat, that's just part of your training, and you've been doing that for decades. But for a civilian, I know that in the circumstance where there is a threat that's visible, we don't always necessarily even see it. It doesn't register in our brains. There's a delay. It's like, oh, does that guy really have a gun? And you're looking at the face instead of the hands, and so we're not trained for that. So there's this delay, and then we become victims.
True. I think training is the other very important piece of our system, is to train the employees and the end users and for them to understand that we're now enabling them to, to survive, right? Because there's only a few things you could do in an active threat, active shooter. You can get away from gunfire without putting yourselves in harm's way, or secure yourself and shelter in place and be ready to survive. Not hide so much, but survive. Whether that means, using environmental weapons, closing your door, shutting the light off, putting your phone on vibrate. In a healthcare environment, we're used to, it's uncomfortable for healthcare employees to say, I'm just going to go and hide. What about my patients?
Right.
Unfortunately, and when a hurricane's coming, we have the time to protect our patients and move them and secure. In an active shooter, you have to survive. So it's changing how their nurses stations, they have a break room. Can that become a safe room? Can that be at least a temporary room of shelter? Do we have to add a deadbolt? Does that violate the code? So there's a lot of things that, yes, this is how you should respond. And also know that with our system, hey, know that siren and strobe or that notification, they're coming. Help is coming. Stay composed. Just like teachers, we need you to stay composed and know that help is coming because the system's live. You hear it, you see it, your emails, there's redundancy built in from text messages, sirens and strobes, notification consoles, and all the other security solutions you may have in your organization.
I really like the fact that you've got this technology because, when we talk about in the public forum, healthcare safety, for public safety, whether it's healthcare or otherwise, it's always the same kind of nonsense. It's very limited solutions, and it's the same one. Well, we'll have metal detectors, or we'll have trained guards. It's and there's all this controversy about that. But when you take those issues out, which have limited application, and you have the technology that's trained to do what it does with the AI that you built in, it's kind of a no-brainer. How can anybody not want that,
I think most of the country and organizations have siloed solutions that are in a silo. I have cameras. I have a PA system. I have an alarm system. And it's all siloed. And what we've done with our team and having a robust security background with law enforcement, military, and civilian security experience, we're able to say, let's integrate that. They should be speaking together.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like the Internet of Things, right? If this happens, this happens. And that's how we approach it. And we also want to be sensitive to first responders because we don't want them, we take false alarms and false alarm mitigation extremely important. So we want to make sure that there are emergencies that occur every day in different locations and in healthcare. I think it's not to replace 911. Those are certain things emergencies that you have to just continue to use existing protocols.
Yeah.
But when there's an imminent danger, active shooter, active threat, you need to be able to get those folks, responders, on scene. And also, what about your employees? Give them an opportunity to know what's going on. Hospitals are huge. Gunfire in one corner, you won't hear it. So the program is continuing to grow, and it's continuing to provide solutions for other challenges of how do we respond within the healthcare inside a hospital.
How does that fit in the world? I know you don't just work with hospitals but other healthcare facilities. How integral is some kind of a system like this for healthcare facilities in general? I know hospitals and the others.
Sure. I think absolutely. Hospitals do have, and more are increasing their security force and the things they have in place. But I think nursing homes, assisted living facilities, even adult living facilities are lagging behind. There might be a gate to get in, but really nothing beyond that. My dad, who's a police officer, was progressed through a facility like that. I think I saw a security guard there maybe once or twice ever, but really vulnerable. People in their own apartments with their own valuables. So in the hospital, you're not going to find a lot of valuables, but in a place like that, their residents, there are going to be valuables there, which sometimes can bring, the motivation to get in there. And I think security could be absolutely lacking at facilities like that as well, with even more vulnerable people.
It's funny that you say that, because my folks are, in a continuing care community. My pop is 90, my mom's 89. There is no visible means of security other than a gate. You got a gate that you got to go through, and frankly, it's easy to go through without getting checked. But when you get in, do I see cameras? Do I see security personnel? Do I see anything? Nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. And they've got, I don't know, a couple thousand people living there, and they're old, and some of them are sick, and they're clearly really vulnerable. There's nothing there.
I think in those scenarios, obviously Americans were aesthetically pleasing. We like glass. That's how we build. And in those environments, we don't want it to look like a jail. Mm-hmm. So there's opportunities to enhance security and safety solutions and platforms in those environments. But again, I agree with you. I've been to several locations like that just to conduct risk assessments, and I see security lacking because also those folks have different ailments and sicknesses. They may have dementia. They may have, now they have this new personality, and they're going to wander out. So it's not only for the external threats, it's the internal threats that they can do to themselves or to others as they act out.
And I love that you have it at work, in houses of worship, in schools, in every soft target that I can think of. You have it active.
I think just going back to CMS, my initial engagement with the hospitals was not to sell to the hospitals. I looked at the emergency room as part of that first responder network. And I was very disappointed and upset at the results of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. Many people died because they bled out. Number one, they didn't know how to put a tourniquet on or save themselves. Additionally, the hospitals were not prepared for mass casualty, whether it was to deploy or to receive. So I felt that notifying the emergency room and surgeons is important when there's an incident in a hospital, an active shooter. That was my approach. And the hospital said, wait a minute, we have our own issues here. This is something that we'd like to discuss further. Not only active threats, but how can we communicate our internal emergencies? And that was the initial engagement. So and of course, our system and platform satisfy the CMS final rule of 2017, where this under emergency preparedness, where this enhances that communication method. So now everyone gets the information, what is going on, where is it going on, and actually what does it look like, because we can transmit images.
This is something that, just from a pure conscience perspective, belongs in every healthcare facility. They've got to protect these patients. And there just isn't any excuse for it, because they're just waiting for something bad to happen if they don't.
I think the C-suite is looking at the occurrences, whether it was the incident and the MGM shooting, outdoor shooting at the concert, or the schools. I mean, the Uvalde school shooting in Texas, $1 billion lawsuit. C-suite is starting. This is affecting shareholder value. So the insurance industry is now on board. The C-suite is now, hey, safety security director, what are we doing? What are we doing to enhance, to protect our employees, protect the public, the folks that walk through? And this is it's not a second amendment discussion, and it's not a left, right, or center. It's just an enhancement, utilizing technology to enhance existing. We're not ripping out cameras. We're agnostic. Our platform can work with your cameras. We have film. You have glass. We don't want to replace your glass. We have a film that can at least negate the bullets coming in, but yet you can shoot out if you have to. So there's a holistic approach we're doing now, where we can kind of deter and at the same time put a response mechanism and platform using AI to respond and have our first responders quickly.
That's really a no-brainer. It's kind of an impossible value proposition. You're like, well, okay, come on over and evaluate us and show us how to weave this in and get this handled.
Yeah.
I don't think you have a tech background. Am I right?
I don't.
How did you get into? Because to me, we know each other a little bit. Yeah. There's no way I want anything to do with tech, and you're in the middle of it, having founded a tech company.
Right. I think it goes back to, so I did 29 years in the Navy as a Navy SEAL, both active and reserve components. when I wasn't serving on active duty, I started my federal law enforcement career as a deputy U.S. Marshal, working in New York, Miami, West Palm, and then 9/11 struck, and I went over to Homeland Security. I retired as a special agent several years ago. But throughout that career, I trained hundreds of folks in several disciplines. One of my focus areas was that active shooter, training people on how to respond. But then I started thinking, myself and along with one of my co-founders, started thinking, how can we get this information to those? Because when cops finally get the message, they're quick to respond. But getting that information to them is where the lag is.
Right.
You're forcing someone to run, hide, pick up a phone, or take out a phone and unlock it, look for an app that they've never used before. So that's what drove us say, hey, we have to cut all that down for this specific purpose and get it to those first responders. And then I said, what about those employees? They need to have the same information coming to them. It's only fair. So that's what drove me in this direction. And of course, I'm never going to be the smartest guy in the room. You find your team and you find those folks that are smarter in the engineering and the tech background and even in management. And that's how we're able to grow the business.
So you found and created the team
Correct.
for an idea that you had.
Correct.
How long between conception and you had a product?
It took us a year to build a prototype that we were proud about and that was extremely functional. And then, of course, I don't have a sales background, but that actually works to my advantage because when I speak to people, they know I'm a parent first.
Yeah.
I am very passionate, and it's about saving lives. And I think that's the message that I tell to my folks, and they adopt it, and we're able to, that transcends to everybody, to the clients, to potential clients, and to everyone because. Again, you turn on the TV, you have violence and hate everywhere, and there's a lot of influencers out there. So, but that's my background, not really tech. I have enough to get dangerous, and when folks start talking, I'll get an ice cream headache. But you're bringing the right folks to.
People look at a guy like Elon Musk and they think, oh my God, he's super high tech and what have you. He must be a tech guy, and he is, as it turns out. So I've always assumed that to start a tech-based company, you have to be like an engineer or a tech guy. And you've shown me that's not at all true. Well, you just got to know how to create a team and build a team.
I have an alibi. I will say that that what I've said to you is accurately accurate, but bringing in my current two partners that have done this before in a different space, and they are pure technology guys and understand software. That was sort of the missing gap to get that AI.
Yep.
That was the missing gap. Get the AI in that can, again, identify those weapons. And it's constantly learning, right? If a security guard who's a good guy has a weapon, is it going to go off? Where's it going to go? So it learns who that person is in body language and all of this. So
that's so cool.
It's interesting. And
it's so cool.
It is.
It was really impressive for me to see the videos that you were showing me where somebody walks into a room and the system identifies the guy, the weapon, and immediately communicates. There's no human decision making or timing. It just goes, it's literally kind of Star Trek-y to me.
It is.
It was super cool and very effective.
Yeah, it is extremely effective and can be utilized a number of different ways, depending on what state and whatever corporate policies you may have. So.
What were the biggest challenges that you've had as you got this product into commerce? What was the biggest problem?
I think, I never really had any challenges with, I'll speak with the ones I didn't have with law enforcement, public safety, emergency communications, emergency management. They all understand and support the program. Why? Because leadership from mayors and town councils are saying, what are we doing, Sheriff? What are we doing, Chief? So this helps them. There's no cost for them to participate in this and to receive those alerts. And having a vetted company with a patent and with the credentials we have in law enforcement helps. So never a challenge with that. But I think it sometimes could be a budget challenge with schools and, because what happens when it comes to security, a lot of folks say, how high do I need to have the fence? Well, 3 feet. Those are the regulations, 3 feet. but someone like me go, hey, let's put a 6-foot fence. Let's put an 8-foot fence. Let's do it the right way. So the challenges we have are with organizations or individuals who just want to check the box. Check the box with an app, or check the box with something that's really not a true solution, but yet it satisfies the mandate. They've done something. And I think, doing it right is different than just checking the box.
So how much of how much of an educational role are you playing at the inception of these relationships?
I think, just like you mentioned, the demo is very powerful. And I think the demo speaks for itself. And we do get, when you have an objection on a phone call, especially an exploratory phone call, and then you have that second call with a demo, it answers most of the questions and answers the objections.
That picture paints
Right.
1,000 words thing.
Correct.
Yeah, it really impacted me.
Yep.
Yeah,
And-
and I hadn't seen it. I'd known about it. We talked about it for a long time, but then seeing that video, that's when my checkbook would come out.
You had mentioned earlier about the different verticals. It's now there's large cities that we're engaged with. Why? Because it's also an anti-crime platform. These individuals and criminals that are going around the country that think they can go into a Walmart or a different store and just walk out with equipment and strike people and assault them. We can help them. We should be able to help them. And so we're engaged with several cities to discuss our anti-crime system that can augment and support and supply information.
We're seeing this as well. This, we all know this, that we're seeing this in business as well, where there's a tremendous amount of instability created within stores that are shutting down, leaving areas. Their attitude is, look, we don't know how to deal with the risks and the violence, so we'll just leave. Yeah. So you're literally taking all of these stores, all of the employees are left with no jobs out of these increasingly blighted cities and areas. And that's their idea of, this is how you deal with aggression. This is how you deal with violence. You just run from it. And it's killing business and it's killing cities.
Yeah, it's a business risk, like we mentioned earlier. You have to really, what's the ROI on this? What is the return on investment? For me, there's a cost and then there's a price. The price is blood. The price is an employee or someone who's dead. And then, of course, there's a cost. We can't put a price or a cost on a human body, but I look at things in that perspective.
Yeah.
And again, you're leveraging technology. So these businesses need to look and really conduct an internal assessment of their facilities, because like every facility, every building, every hospital is different. It's a different look. And unlike a fire alarm, there's really, for an active shooter, you can't choreograph the response because the shooting could be coming from there. So we have to go in a different area. So it's not just plug and play or something to code every 20 feet. You have to understand the dynamic of the organization, the people. How do they get the training? Is it hands-on? Can you train 5,000 people? I'm sure you can, but business-wise, a video would be the best way. But how do we do these like in the hospitals? Can we do these tabletops? Can we actually do a full-blown exercise with department heads? And that's something we did recently with our hospital, where we did incorporate our system as part of that response that actually initiated the exercise. And by initiating the exercise, now everyone's getting the information and they're able to follow their protocols.
How much is it, how frequently does a system like a hospital system have to train up to interact with the system and be familiar with it and learn that it's a team member? And
we suggest that at least once a year that they conduct training. They review the videos, the training videos. And of course, we've provided for onboarding purposes, the ability for these new employees to go through a training. And we're actually now building a training kit, if you will, physical training kit, so they can, if they wanted to train, they can bring in their new employees who can actually be part of a training kit experience because that's the key is experiencing what you've experienced, what you've both done, is getting that text, getting that notification, getting the email, and understanding how it communicates with all the other security technologies is important.
How often do facilities train on active shooter or anything like that?
If they've had one, they do it regularly.
Yeah.
If they haven't had one, it's probably more sporadic. I know we implemented an annual training in conjunction with local law enforcement. New employees didn't get that. They got it the next time the annual training came around. But I could see how you would incorporate in this, because new employees are required in every hospital in Florida to undergo an orientation. And I could see this could easily be incorporated into either the risk management module or some other module. So every new employee comes in. And when you have that constant refresher, you have a relatively fresh knowledge within the hospital.
Well, you know what? Now that the technology's here, now that it's proven, you put it in virtually every setting, and it's working. It's just good news and inexcusable not to have it.
I agree.
Yeah, I love the AI feature. I don't know anything about AI. I just know, little articles, but when I watch the videos that you guys have where you see AI at work, I want to buy that.
Yeah.
Because I want people and things that matter to me to be safe.
Sure.
Yeah.
When you have a location that you control and our system's employees only, that's great. But when you have a system or a setting where you have employees and public coming in off the street, possibly getting lost down a hallway in a hospital or town halls, believe it or not, we're in some town halls and municipal buildings. Even though the police department's across the street, people come in, they want their permits, it's not approved, they are carrying guns, the cashier, the permit folks are upset or getting nervous. So even in that setting, that's so close. And you know what happens in those scenarios is, if you were to dial 911, that scenario, that 911 call would go 10 miles away to a dispatch center. And then that message time, then it goes back to the police department, which is across the street, or to the nearest police officer. So again, it's time. So in that active shooter scenario, let's get them right there. Let's stop this game. And then you have the security industry that has the monitoring services. Again, there's a need for them. And we actually have a tertiary method which is redundant too. We have one that we use to also make the call to support, but that's a tertiary and a redundant method. So you could see in that scenario where I could see the police, but it's going to go here or there, and then finally get to them, and they'll be here in 10 minutes.
It sounds impossible the way you describe it.
Yeah,
it's like, well, you drive to Des Moines, and then you fly to Jacksonville, and one day you can get to Miami where the threat is.
And again, there's accidents on I-95.
Sure.
We have to call 911. There's a need for 911.
Yeah.
Even though there was an incident in, I think it was Buffalo, New York, where the store clerk, there was a shooting, and the person dialed into 911, and they're whispering, "What's going on?" Well, there must be a joke. And 911's hanging up on them because the person doesn't want to disclose that they're hiding in a closet. They're trying to relay and provide amplifying information. Can't do it. Why? Because, so there are limitations sometimes of someone trying to survive and trying to provide information to 911.
Super quiet.
It's tough.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for not just coming, but solving this problem, and we hope that we can help you get the word out.
No, absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here, and unrelated to SOS, I sit on the board of Navy SEAL Museum. Of course, I've extended the invite, and you're invited as well to come. It's up in Fort Pierce, Florida. Please come up. It's a great little museum.
Thanks, man.
Visit us.
Pleasure. Thanks, Hector.
Thanks, Hector.